Since the end of the Four Nations face-off, the Blues have been the story of the NHL, with an NHL best 17-2-2 record since the break and currently on an 11-game winning streak. The Blues look to have all the momentum they need right now to make a surprise playoff run that no one would have predicted earlier in the season.
Following a second round exit to the Colorado Avalanche in the 2022 playoffs, the Blues have looked to be kind of in a no man's land area. I mean, we're not good enough to make the playoffs, but not bad enough to tank for the top draft pick. So, following back to back seasons of not making the playoffs, the Blues made some major changes in the offseason here. Fletcher, do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, so following an actually pretty successful season in 2024, they had like 92 points, were the best team to not make the playoffs. The Blues looked to make a few changes, mostly to try and get younger because we were one of the oldest teams in the NHL. So the first major change they made, which was like right after the season started, they made a trade with Columbus, trading away a fourth round pick for Alexandria Texier, and they gave him a 2-year, $4.2 million contract following the trade. And this was kind of a low risk, high reward trade, as Texier was a decent young player who had struggled with Columbus but had a lot of potential. Hasn't really worked out, unfortunately. As he's only played in 31 games this season and has been a healthy scratch. But it wasn't a bad move from Armstrong, and it was the type of move that showed what the Blues offseason was going to be like. Because following this, they also made moves to acquire the Joseph brothers, which were a little bit more surprising. I'm not gonna lie, when this first happened, I kind of thought it was gonna be like a marketing gimmick, trying to get like two brothers to play on the same team. But it was pretty cool. I mean, it was one of the highlights early on in the season was seeing those two play together. And they only gave up a third round pick for Matthew, and then Pierre Oliver was a free agent. So yeah, it didn't really work out super well either. I mean, Matthew is a decent bottom six forward, but not anything too special. And Pierre Oliver ended up getting traded for future considerations. So kind of a not big effect on the team.
Yeah, I mean, the Blues also made some moves to add veterans to the roster. We got Foxa from Dallas. I mean, we signed a 39-year-old Ryan Sutter to a 1-year contract. And then we brought in
Mhm.
the we he was basically brought in to replace the injured Tony Krug, who was on long-term IR. I mean, the biggest moves in the offseason though were both offer sheets. I mean, we got offer sheeted both Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway from the Oilers. I mean, that is a crazy, crazy deal. I mean, what did you think of
Mhm.
that?
Well, it was incredibly controversial at the
Yeah.
time, as offer streets sheets are very taboo and
Mm-hmm.
almost kind of an unofficial rule that GMs don't do them. So it was very surprising when it happened. And it kind of left the Oilers in a really bad spot because they didn't have a lot of cap space, and these were two good young players
Yeah.
that the Oilers just couldn't really afford to pay. So the Blues took advantage of that and offer sheeted both of them, and Edmonton ended up not they ended up letting both of them leave, which was also kind of surprising at the time because it seemed like they'd keep at least one of them and let the other one leave, but they ended up saying that the Blues could have both of them, and the Blues only had to give up a second and third round pick for both of them. So it seemed kind of like a risky, albeit high ceiling, high potential move because they did seemingly overpay to get them at the time. But both of these signings have been honestly the two best signings any team has made in the
For
offseason, I
sure.
think.
Yeah.
Holloway had 63 points in 77 games this season. He's been one of the best forwards on the Blues. And then Broberg has arguably been the Blues' best defenseman and has also had 28 points in 64 games this season. And it's really helped a roster that was pretty old and didn't really see a great future with this team. You added two really, really good young players that completely changed the trajectory of this team, I felt like.
Yeah, it's safe to say the Blues did not look back after this trade. But, I mean, let's talk about the first half of the season. I mean, the Blues started off the NHL season by playing away at Seattle, and we came away with a 3-2 comeback win. And then we had another comeback victory in our next game versus San Jose. And that basically ended up being the longest win streak of the season because we just flatlined and we actually began to struggle early on. Like, I mean, the defense and the goaltending were really rough going into that first half of the season, man. I mean,
Mhm.
let's talk about the rock bottom here. The multiple 8-1 losses in a span of a couple of weeks. I mean, Ottawa on October 29th and Washington on November 9th. I mean, we do know that Washington's one of the best teams in the league, but still, man, we were not in a good spot at
Mhm.
that time. Do you want to talk about our coach firing here?
Yeah, so following this kind of rocky start where the Blues were okay, they were hovering around 500, but the Blues decided to fire Drew Bannister on November 24th and replace him with former Bruins coach Jim Montgomery. And this was a little bit surprising at the time because the Blues weren't horrible when this happened, and it seemed like they were kind of meeting where people thought they were going to be, which is a team that was just around 500.
Yeah,
But I think Doug Armstrong and the ownership saw an opportunity because Jim Montgomery had just been fired by the Boston Bruins and decided they wanted to go out and get him and thought that it was an upgrade over Bannister. And they were definitely right because I think Jim Montgomery has clearly shown he's one of the best coaches in the NHL. And the work that he's done on this team, I think you could say that he's pretty directly correlated with this Blues turnaround.
I mean, also the fact that the Bruins have been utter dog shit ever since he left, man. I
Hmm.
mean, Jim Montgomery, I don't know if he was a problem, you know. I mean, he's done wonders for our
No.
team. But I mean, we also traded for Cam Fowler in December, and we gave a 2027 second round pick and a minor league player. But I mean, it actually ended up being a pretty good addition. I mean, like I think you'd agree, right?
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. I mean, we'll talk about him a little bit more
Yeah,
later, but it to me this seemed kind of pointless at the time because the Blues were not looking super great, and it kind of seemed like you're just giving up a draft pick for a rental player who's not going to be here for much longer. But I mean, this has been a phenomenal trade that has bolstered the defense, and the defense has been pretty great recently. It's almost completely turned around from the
for
first half
sure.
of the season, and honestly, I think Cam Fowler has been a huge part of that.
That's for sure. I mean, the Blues had a 25 to 26 to 5 record going into that Four Nations face-off. And I mean, post that, let's talk about it. It's been insane. Do you want to talk about the recent form we've had here?
Yeah, so following the Four Nations face-off, the Blues had their first game back against the Winnipeg Jets, who are the best team in the NHL, and they ended up coming away with a shootout loss versus them, which no shame in that. Winnipeg's a phenomenal team,
Yeah.
but following this, they went 6-2-2 in their first 10 games back, including a 3-game winning streak after that Jets loss, which was their best in the entire season up to that point, which is kind of crazy that a 3-game winning streak's your best. But following those initial 10 games back, the Blues just went absolutely nuclear. Starting on March 15th was the start of this 11-game win streak. Do you want to talk about that the first few games there?
Oh, I mean, we started off with that 5-1 victory against the Minnesota Wild, 7-2 versus the Anaheim Ducks, 4-1 versus Nashville Predators, 4-3 versus the Vancouver Canucks in overtime, and then we had the 4-1 versus the Blackhawks. I mean, that was a rivalry game here. And then 4-1 Predators, 6-1 Canadians, 3-2 Predators, 2-1 versus Avalanche, which was low-key a pretty big game because that was in Colorado as well. And then we just had two back-to-back overtime wins versus the Red Wings and the Penguins. So, I
Hmm.
mean, we've been on a hot streak. I think we've been outscoring our opponents by mm, a lot of goals. I don't actually know how many goals that is, but it is a crazy amount.
Hmm.
And I mean, do we want to talk about the best players so far?
Yeah, I mean, we Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou were seen as the two best players on the team coming
Yeah.
into this season, and it's really been no surprise that they've had massive contributions during this win streak. Thomas had 3 goals, 16 assists, 19 points in 11 games. That's absolutely insane.
Hmm.
Kyrou had 9 goals, 6 assists, and 15 points. And then talking about Dylan Holloway, the offseason addition that has just made a massive impact on this team. 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points in his last 11 games. He did get injured, which he is currently day to day, I believe. So
Yeah.
hopefully he gets a little bit better because we're going to need him if we want to go on a deep playoff run here. And then Cam Fowler, the late season addition, 2 goals, 8 assists, and 10 points as a defenseman is ridiculous. Like I don't think anyone would have expected that coming into the win streak
No.
that he'd be such a big impact player. But that's this trade, I mean, the Cam Fowler trade has ended up being one of the most underrated deals I think in the NHL this year because the Blues basically gave up nothing to get him. I mean, a 2027 second round pick that's so far off than a minor league player who's probably the Blues
Yeah,
didn't really value too much. So crazy trade.
I completely agree. I mean, I feel like the defense has been phenomenal in these past couple games. We're coming off of that Colton Parayko injury. I mean, he was one of the better Blues defenders. He was one of our best defenders. I mean, the Blues defense
Mhm.
has actually stepped it up in the past couple of weeks, Ever since he got injured. I don't remember when he got injured. It was what, a month and a half ago or something like that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we've been on a hot streak with the defense has been very good. I mean, that last game versus the Penguins, we had a lot of players who got kind of banged up in that game, especially like our captain Braden Shen got kind of checked in the back. I think he's supposed to play tonight versus Avalanche, and then yeah,
Mhm.
we had that Dylan Holloway who is day to day, but I think he should be fine. Hopefully for, I think we play the Jets next, right? Right? So
Yeah.
Jets are yeah. But I mean, do you want to talk about these upcoming games here that we have? I mean, we have a gauntlet of a schedule coming up.
Yeah, so the Blues actually had one of the easier schedules in the NHL following the Four Nations face-off, which I think
Yeah.
has helped a lot with the winning streak. Obviously, they've played like the Predators like 3 times, I think, which is wild that they'd schedule that way. Like it seems a little bit much, but um, the Blues have a much more difficult schedule coming up.
Yeah.
Currently tonight they play Colorado, which is going to be a very tough game. We played them during the win streak. It was honestly the hardest game. I think personally it was the toughest game. The Blues barely came out with the win in that one. And then they go to Winnipeg and then to Edmonton, two very tough teams. And then they finish the season off with a game in Seattle and then at home against
Versus
Utah. So not a lot of there's not a lot of easy games or points to up for grabs there. It's gonna be a really tough schedule. But the Blues have put themselves in a phenomenal position, and with other contenders like the Flames and the Wild going through kind of a lull right now, it seems like the Blues have all but secured a playoff spot at this point, and are kind of fighting for seeding, trying to get the number one wild card spot. So, which is, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy because the Blues were kind of seen as a super long shot just a few weeks ago to even make the playoffs, and now they're one of the favorites to make it.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the Wild have lost their past 4 games actually. So, I
Mhm.
mean, the Wild have been in a really bad form as of late, and I think I think the Wild are still technically above us in the wild card spot just because of the head-to-head record.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, if the Wild keep dropping these points, and hopefully we keep winning. I don't know who would we play if we got the first wild card? That would be the Kings?
Vegas
Yeah, Vegas. Okay. So we play the Golden
or
Knights.
or the Kings. It depends on who ends up winning that division, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah, and then if we got the second wild card spot, that would be the Jets.
Yeah, who are
Yeah.
the best team in the league? So,
So it's ideal that we would finish above the Wild
hmm
here, hopefully. So we
hmm
have to lock in these next couple of weeks. I mean, the Minnesota Wild, they are playing the Stars tomorrow. They also, I mean, they do have they play Calgary and Vancouver. So that's basically also our competition right there. So hopefully they kind of,
hmm
I don't know, hopefully they drop some points here and there. But I mean, what are your expectations here for the next 5 weeks? Like, what do you think the most probable
well,
outcome is?
obviously, I hope the win streak continues, but just being realistic, I hope the Blues are just able to secure that first wild card spot. I
Yeah.
think we're in a good spot right now because Minnesota has just been absolutely decimated by injuries and is
Hmm.
completely falling apart. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were the number one team in the
They
NHL
were,
like
yeah,
in
not that
December,
long
and
ago.
now
Yeah.
they're on
I
the verge of missing the playoffs, which is a crazy fall off. But the Blues are looking pretty solid right now, and I feel like with the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's all about momentum. I mean, we've seen that with the Blues. Obviously, everyone keeps talking about 2019 and how this is eerily similar to that. But that I don't think the Blues just had a ton of momentum going into the playoffs that year that they were able to capitalize on. And it kind of feels the same way right now that I don't think there's a team that we can't beat in a 7 game series with
Yeah,
the way that we've been playing right
for
now.
sure.
Even if we're going to have to play Winnipeg or Vegas in the first round, which is going to be a super tough matchup. But
Yeah.
right now, I'm taking the Blues over anybody, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, what is that? We're currently tied for the or for the club for franchise record. We're tied
Mm.
for their win streak right now, 11 games straight. If we win tonight, that will be a new franchise record right now, 12 games straight. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. We have to ride on this momentum. I mean, I really do hope that Minnesota still keeps dropping points, but I mean, this schedule that we have here is low key a gauntlet.
Mhm.
I also saw, what was crazy is that if you bet $100 on the Blues to win the past 11 games, you would have made like 34 grand. That's actually
Yeah,
insane,
yeah.
dude. But
And I want to talk.
yeah, go on. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, I want to talk about the 11 game win streak real quick because some of these games have just been absolutely mental. Like watching them. I mean, you
yeah,
started off with 3 blowout wins against Minnesota, Anaheim, and Nashville, um, which nothing too special there or interesting, but were phenomenal results. But that fourth game of the win streak against Vancouver, at the time, this was probably the biggest game
hmm
of the NHL season because us and Vancouver were neck and neck fighting for that second wild card spot.
yep.
So whoever won this game was going to get a huge advantage over the other and was seemingly going to be the favorite to make the playoffs. So, this game in St. Louis, the Blues took a 3-2 lead late in this game, and then Vancouver scored with literally like seconds left to
Yeah.
tie the game and send it to overtime. And I was about to crash out after this, I'm not going to lie. But Broberg had one of the craziest OT winners that you'll see from a defenseman where he kind of just skated through the whole team.
hmm
Um, that man is just absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe Edmonton let him walk. But that was probably I feel like that was kind of the biggest game of the season for the Blues. Kind of the most memorable because of the impact that it had. I mean, following that, blowout win versus Chicago, blowout win versus Nashville. They played Montreal, who were also on a win streak at the time and were the second
Yep.
hottest team besides the Blues. And then they absolutely killed them as well. Um,
The
and then
next game, the Predators game, that
yeah,
3-2 win versus the Predators, I think that wasn't that the game that it was what 0.1 seconds left in the game, and the
yeah.
Predators player he actually scored, but it turns out the puck left his stick like at zero, so we kind of made it out of that game with that win in regulation.
Yeah, I was gonna say that game, Nashville seemed like the much better team. It seemed like the Blues
Yeah,
were absolutely gassed going into that game, and the Predators were up 2-0 very early on, and ended up choking it in the third period. And then yeah, they tried to they scored at the end, but they took it to VAR and reviewed that shit,
that
and
was
they said no, that did not count because it was past the buzzer had already rang and it
that
was
was
past the time.
who was it? That was the game that who was it? I don't remember. It was one of our players started like beating up one of the Predators rookies, bro, and he got like
Oh
it was like a 3 minute major, and then it turned out
yes,
at that like last like 3 minutes of that game it ended up being like a 6v4 or like a six. It was like a five
yes,
v three,
yes,
six
and
v four. It was crazy. I mean, that game was one of my favorite games to watch because that game was just funny as
mhm.
fuck. It was actually just like a war zone that game.
Yeah.
But I mean, you
I
want to talk
mean,
about that? Yeah, go on.
well, I was gonna say, yeah, that was a chippy rivalry game that I think the Blues were kind of lucky to come away with. But I mean, going into that, we had another massive rivalry game against Colorado,
hmm
who is a team that in the past few years have kind of owned us. Obviously, the last time we made the playoffs, they're the ones that eliminated us. Last 2 times we made the playoffs, actually, they're the ones that eliminated us. So going into this game, this was another huge one, and Colorado was on a long win streak at home as well. They were one of the better teams in the NHL, and we were able to come away with a 2-1 win following a Jordan Binnington masterclass,
Yeah,
especially at the end of that game.
for sure.
And I just want to talk about Binnington for a second because he's been, known for being this guy that's very inconsistent, kind of hard to predict. Last season, he actually played very well. I thought goaltending was probably the Blues' biggest strength last year, the Binnington-Hofer combo,
Mm.
and it had just not been good to start the year. It had completely fallen off. But Binnington got called up to Team Canada as their starting goalie for the Four Nations, and dude went absolutely nuclear. He robbed the USA in that final. And it feels like since then, him and Hofer have been r- really solid, definitely massively improved during this win streak compared to where they were earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean that Avalanche game was absolutely mental. I think was Nathan McKinnon was like is like the most informed player I think right now. I think,
Hmm.
and he actually ended up scoring versus us. But I mean, these next two games were both overtime wins. I mean, that Penguins game that was what was that like 2 nights ago? That Penguins game was
Hmm.
insane. 5-4. I mean, okay. Also, one of the people that we have not talked about yet is the new player that we just acquired, Jimmy Snuggerud from Minnesota.
Yeah.
We have not talked about him, and according to a very reliable source, aka our friend Jacob Schreiner, this kid is insane. Every three shots
Yeah.
he makes, apparently one goes bar down. Jacob was pissed
Hmm.
off every time he watches Michigan State play Minnesota, you know. But
Yeah.
I mean, this kid is absolutely insane. He ended up getting his first point in this game, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great talking point because him and Delibor Dvorsky, who two of our recent first round picks, have both made their debuts during this win streak. And you've also had Jake Neighbors playing. He's been playing the whole season,
Yeah.
but he was another recent first round pick.
Mhm.
And it really seems like the Blues have hit on a lot of their draft picks recently, which is a great sign. Because just a couple years ago, the Blues were seen as having one of the worst prospect pools in the NHL, and now it seems like they have one of the best. And if you count the offseason acquisitions of Holloway and Broberg, I think the Blues have one of the better younger cores in the league. It seems like really if they can just get a couple more younger defensemen to replace some of those guys, because our defense is extremely old.
Yeah.
Besides Broberg, that the Blues are going to be looking really good going forward for the future.
Yeah, I mean, best of luck to the Blues here, man. Oh, also, I just kind of just this just kind of popped in my head. What happened to Brandon Saad, bro? Where is that brother? I mean, the last time I saw him play, he scored a hat trick, but like after that, he did nothing. I genuinely don't know where he is, bro. Like I remember, I vividly remember I was at that game. It was who do we play? It was some team from the West Coast. It was a it was a Senators game. He scored a hat trick in that game. After that, he
Mhm.
just kind of got sent to the Shadow Realm. I don't know where he
Yeah,
is.
he got his contract terminated actually. He's currently on Vegas.
Oh my god.
But yeah, Brendan Saw, I think he was kind of a perfect encapsulation of the philosophy of Doug Armstrong over the past few years, which had been to kind of overpay to sign veteran players to fill in gaps on the roster. We've seen that a lot with the defense. Obviously, Torrey Krug. They let Petrangelo walk and sign Torrey Krug for a little bit cheaper, but still to a massive contract, and that ended up being an awful move because Krug has been, in my opinion, he's been just complete ass when he plays. Because I just don't like his playing style. I think
Mhm.
a defenseman that can't play defense is just not a winning formula. I don't care what the analytics say. And he's just been on long-term IR this whole year, which helps us with our cap situation. But that brother's ass. That was a terrible contract, respectfully. And then the Brandon Saad one, the Blues really needed a left winger at the time, so they went out and gave Brandon Saad a massive contract, overpaid to get him. And it kind of feels like they're trying to right the wrongs of the past few years by
Yeah.
only going after younger players. Obviously, they did trade for Cam Fowler, they did sign Ryan Suter, but those were both they gave up pretty much nothing and signed them to like minimum deals. So I think the asset management from Armstrong has improved a lot for this season, and it makes me a lot more hopeful and optimistic for the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I completely agree with everything you just said. You know, one thing that I mean, going back to that 1-4-1 Blackhawks game, I really hope that we actually I don't know. I'd want to see Pat Maroon retire as a Blue. It kind of hurts to see him on the Blackhawks, but I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
my. I just kind of remembered that. I would like to see at the end of the
Hmm.
season, with Pat Maroon retiring and all, kind of having him retire as a blue.
I was gonna say, I think my personal favorite game from the win streak was the 10th win, the 2-1 win versus Detroit, because I felt like this was a great showing of resilience from the Blues because they actually were by far the better team, outshot Detroit by a lot in this game, but Cam Talbot was kind of standing on his head,
Yeah.
and they were just getting super unlucky with a lot of the chances they had. They ended up falling down 1-0 late in the game, and then they pulled the goalie, had the sixth man on the ice, and Jordan Kyrou scored kind of a late winner. It was kind
Hmm.
of a fluky goal that he didn't even really mean to shoot. It was supposed to
Yeah.
be more of a pass or redirection, but it ended up going in, and he tied the game. And then the Blues ended up winning it in overtime. And I think this one was my favorite because to me, this kind of felt like the type of performance you're going to need in the playoffs. Like this separates the good teams from the great teams. I felt like is your ability to overcome adversity and kind of the random bullshit that gets thrown at you. Like Cam Talbot having, a
Yeah.
36 save
Yeah.
masterclass.
Masterclass.
Like the random stuff like that. If you're able to overcome it, that's what is going to help you go far. So I've seen a lot from the Blues, I think, over this win streak to say that I'm relatively confident in them going forward. I think I mean, everybody at this point is going to have the Blues as their sleeper dark horse team in the playoffs, but
Yeah.
I really think if they can get a favorable matchup, maybe Vegas or Los Angeles in the first round, then I would be inclined to pick them for the upset.
I completely agree. And I mean, even if it does not work out in the playoffs this year, I really do think that we are going to be a scary team for the future here. I mean, we do have a lot of
Mhm.
players that are kind of meant for the future, with like Snuggerud, Dvorsky, and all these players that we're kind of getting. But like, dude, I mean, the Blues in the next couple of years, I think we're actually going to be like a serious team that people need to actually take seriously. Like even if we don't end
Mhm.
up winning the cup this year, I mean, I still think this is an absolute win, of a season.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even just thinking about where we were a couple months ago, just making the playoffs is a huge success. And shout out to Doug Armstrong, who I still think is one of the best GMs. I know he's made some questionable signings and trades, like the Kevin Hayes trade that was complete ass. But I still love him. I think Blues fans were a little bit harsh to him, and I think he just has the ability to really his strong suit is making trades and acquisitions from other teams. The contracts I know he's been a little bit questionable with, but I mean, some of the negotiating, this man must have put like all of his skill points in negotiating because I can't believe he gets away with some of the stuff that he does. Like even the offer sheets, in
Yeah,
hindsight, were absolutely mental that those both of them
devious
went
for
through.
sure.
But,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think I have nothing left to say. I mean, this team is in a very good spot. I
Mhm.
mean, I really hope that we make a deep playoff run this year. But I mean, if we don't, if it doesn't work out, I really do think that the Blues are kind of set for the future. That's basically all I have
Yeah.
to say. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. I mean, let's cheer on the Blues these next couple of weeks. Hopefully, we make the playoffs. I mean, hopefully, we make a deep run in the playoffs here. But I think the Cubs coming home this year.
Mm.